Ever since my husband died, I have been a very lonely woman. I am a 55-year-old woman. I have one son who is 27 years old and two grandchildren, a 10-year-old boy and a 2-year-old girl. My son's first child is from his ex-girlfriend who is 25 years old, while his second child and soon-to-be twins are from his current wife who is also 27 years old. My son is a very bright but naive boy. He was head over heels in love with his ex, and when he got accepted into his dream university, she dropped out of school to follow him and start their perfect family. However, their relationship didn't survive the following year. Despite all the stress and workload of college, my son still paid child support and visited his child. They both moved on to different relationships. My son married a beautiful and kind girl he met in college, while his ex started dating another man and had 3 more kids. 7-year-old girl, 4-year-old girl, 2-year-old boy with him. Earlier this month, my son's ex came to him in need of somewhere to live. To put it briefly, her new partner was an awful person. She was 7 months pregnant, had 4 kids, no money, no job or education. His ex has a mental illness that has caused her a hard time keeping a job, and they had been living at a homeless shelter for the past week. My son and daughter-in-law were kind enough to let them temporarily stay at their home, rent-free, until she found somewhere else. My daughter-in-law's parents work in real estate and were renting out one of their properties, a 2-bedroom house, to them for a reduced cost. My son and his wife had been having financial troubles ever since their daughter was born prematurely, and with the twins on the way, I thought they would be in need of a larger home. In the 1990s, I inherited a spacious house from my grandparents, which has 7 bedrooms and 3 extra rooms that have been turned into an office, library, and art studio. As an otherwise regular middle-class couple, my husband and I were incredibly thankful for their generosity. It's so large that it can technically be considered a mansion, and I've been living in it all alone after my husband's death. I discussed it with my son and daughter-in-law, and we agreed it would be best if they moved in. After all, this house is way too big for one woman. However, my son's ex and her kids would not be allowed to join them. My grandson would be allowed to stay if he has no other place to go, but the rest of the family have nothing to do with me. Don't get me wrong, I have empathy for her situation, but at the end of the day, they're not my family, and I worry about potential tensions that could arise. Pregnancy is stressful enough, and it wouldn't be fair for my daughter-in-law to share her husband with his ex. I refuse to let my beautiful home become a breeding ground for dysfunction. I talked this over with the parents of my daughter-in-law, and they decided to give the ex 1 month to find somewhere else to stay while my son prepares to move in. The ex is absolutely livid with me for trying to tear apart her family. I explained to her that it was my house, my rules. Am I the idiot? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You mean the 15-year-old your son knocked up had to drop out of school because she was a 15-year-old mother and she tried to follow the father of her child? You say your son was naive, as if it was entirely a 15-year-old's idea to get pregnant, and he was tricked into it. You aren't required to take them in, but your views of your son and his ex certainly seem a bit skewed, given that he was the older one of the two. And oh, I guess he visited his kids sometimes. What a good father, visiting his kids sometimes. Comment 2. Not the idiot. Sure, her situation is awful, but you're not obligated to shelter her and 3 kids that aren't related to you at all. If your son and his wife want to help, then that's really kind of them, but you can make your own decisions. Your points are valid. It would not be a good idea to have your son, his wife, his ex, and so many kids under one roof, especially since she's pregnant. I do hope that this woman finds a place to stay and a partner who loves and supports her, but this is not your problem. Now, for the update. Hey Reddit, it's been 2 weeks since my last post, and boy, do I have an update for you. Remember how I told you about my son's ex needing a place to stay, and how I offered my house to my son and his pregnant wife? Well, things have taken a turn, and not for the better. So, my son and his wife started moving their stuff into my place. It's a big house, and it was nice to see it filled with life again. They were so grateful, and I was happy to help. But then, the ex, let's call her Jane, started causing trouble. Jane was supposed to be looking for a new place, right? Well, she wasn't. Instead, she was trying to convince my son that they were still a family because of their son, and that they should all live together in my house. My son, bless his heart, is too kind for his own good sometimes. He didn't want to upset anyone, but he knew his wife, let's call her Emma, wouldn't be okay with it. Emma was already stressed with the twins on the way, and didn't need any more drama. Now, here's where the injustice comes in. Jane went behind everyone's back and talked to Emma's parents, the ones who work in real estate. She spun a sob story about how she had nowhere to go and how it wasn't fair that she was being separated from her son. Emma's parents, feeling sorry for her, decided to let her stay in the property they were renting out for another month, but at an even more reduced cost, practically nothing. Emma was furious when she found out. She felt betrayed by her own parents and couldn't believe they went against their word. It caused a huge fight between Emma and her parents, and my son was caught in the middle of it all. But wait, it gets worse. Jane's other kids started calling my son Dad because they saw how he was with his son and Emma's daughter. This confused the kids and made Emma feel like she was losing her place in her own family. It was heartbreaking to watch. Then, one day, I came home to find Jane in my living room, arguing with Emma. Jane was demanding that my son spend more time with her and their son, and she even had the audacity to suggest that they should all live together as one big family in my house. Emma was standing her ground, but Jane was relentless. I had to step in. I reminded Jane that this was my house and that she had no right to make demands. I told her she was taking advantage of my son's kindness and that it wasn't fair to Emma or the kids. Jane lost it. She started yelling about how I was the reason her family was falling apart and that I was a heartless woman. The confrontation was intense, and it ended with Jane storming out, but not before she threatened to take her son away so that my son would never see him again. My son was devastated. He loves his son, and the thought of not being able to see him was too much. In the midst of all this, Emma went into early labor. It was a scary moment, and my son rushed her to the hospital. Thankfully, the twins were born healthy, but it was a close call. The stress of everything definitely didn't help the situation. Now, Emma and the twins are back home, and my son is trying to navigate this mess. He's been talking to a lawyer about his rights as a father, and Emma's parents are trying to make amends for their mistake. As for Jane, she's still in the property, but the clock is ticking. She knows she has to leave soon, and I think the reality is finally setting in for her. I let Son and his GF live with us if they pay rent and do chores, but they smoke pot and skip work. So I take the car back and they scramble to find a new home with no savings. My son, Jack, 25 years old, and his girlfriend Becky, 24 years old, have lived with us since the middle of the last year. When he moved in, and then eventually she did, the expectation, with all of my children, if they weren't in school, was that they were to pay rent. My son and his girlfriend both do not attend college. My husband and I didn't expect them to pay a lot, just $100 each. Being that they are adults, we figured this would be a way for them to contribute, but also so they would be able to save money to get their own place and be in a good spot financially when they left. Since Christmas, there have been numerous times when bringing up the subject of helping out, dishes, garbage, I would get rude comments or remarks back, such as, "I pay rent now, I don't have to bring the dirty dishes up," or garbage, "That's none of your business. I am an adult and don't need to be told what to do." I have also asked that his girlfriend not smoke pot in the house. I have been told that she doesn't, but we can smell it. So a month ago, he asked if I would co-sign on a car loan. I said yes. I only did it because he has been super responsible his whole life. Now, every other week, he and his girlfriend call in to work 1 to 2 days. I only worry now that he has his car, he will lose this job and I will have another car payment. Now, I have talked to him previously about all of these things. Yesterday, he and his girlfriend called into work, and late last night, the house started smelling of pot. Being that our room is directly above theirs, it smelled all night. When I tried to talk to them, I was ignored. I tried calling and texting, and I received no response. My husband wants to give them an ultimatum, and I am not sure that would be the right move. Am I the idiot? Update. I first want to say thank you to everyone for the advice. Second, my husband and I did talk with Jack last night. We told him all the things that needed to change, or the consequence would be that he and Becky had until the 1st of April to leave. He responded better than I thought he would have, but he agreed that it was time to find their own space. He apologized and said they would begin looking. I told him that if he misses 1 month of paying for his car, I would be taking it away. I will not be on the hook for his irresponsibility, even though I am. He also gave some excuse for the smell of pot in the house that I didn't accept, but gave him a hard boundary that if I smell it in the house again, they will be gone that day. He said that he would make sure that she goes outside every time. I also want to clarify, I don't mind that they do it. I just really don't like the smell. So now we wait. Also wanted to add, since a lot of people have said that he doesn't sound super responsible. Before he met his current girlfriend, he most definitely was. He has been great about doing what he had to when he had to. Just, he has not been that way lately. Again, thank you all. I truly appreciated all the advice. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. I'm sorry, but with all the help you did, what do you get in return? Disrespect, laziness, and a house that smells like a pot farm. That's outrageous. They're adults, for crying out loud. Doing some basic chores isn't exactly backbreaking labor, yet they can't even manage that. If they want to live under your roof, they need to start acting like responsible adults. It's about time they grow up and start pulling their weight. If they can't handle that, maybe it's time they find somewhere else to crash. You're not running a charity here. Comment 2. Not the idiot. LOL. Seriously? What the hell do they think happens if they pay rent to a landlord, that the landlord's gonna do their dishes or take out their trash? Do they sincerely believe ignoring people will make their obligations vanish into thin air? They're coasting on the coattails of life. Reality isn't going to be kind to them. Work with your spouse to work out a mutually agreeable ultimatum for you two, then pass it on. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, I'm back with an update on the situation with my son Jack and his girlfriend Becky living with us. I really appreciated all the advice from my last post. So after the talk we had with Jack, things seemed to be looking up. He was more attentive, and for a while, they both started doing their chores without being asked. It felt like we were finally getting back the responsible son we knew before Becky came into the picture. But then, things took a turn. Jack started coming home late from work, and sometimes he didn't go at all. Becky was the same, and they both would spend days just lounging around the house. The smell of pot became a regular thing again, despite the boundaries we set. It was like our words went in one ear and out the other. One night, I caught them sneaking out to the car. They thought they were being slick, but the glow of the dashboard lights gave them away. I confronted them the next morning, and Jack tried to brush it off, saying they just needed some alone time. But I wasn't born yesterday. I knew they were smoking in the car to hide it from us. The missed workdays piled up, and I was getting more and more anxious about the car loan I co-signed. I didn't want to admit it, but I was starting to regret my decision. Jack had always been so good with money, saving up from his part-time jobs in high school. But now, it was like he was a different person. Then came the bombshell. Becky announced she was pregnant. It was a shock to us all, and for a moment, it seemed to sober them up. They started talking about the future, about getting serious and finding a place of their own. It was a glimmer of hope that maybe this would be the wake-up call they needed. But as the weeks went by, the old habits crept back in. The job skipping started again, and the tension in the house grew. My husband and I were at our wits' end. We loved Jack, but we couldn't keep living like this. The final straw came when I found out Jack had missed a car payment. I was furious. We had an agreement, and he broke it. I confronted him, and he had the nerve to ask me to cover for him, just this once. I stood my ground and reminded him of the consequences. He pleaded, saying he'd been trying to save up for a place for him and Becky, but it was too late. I had to be firm. So, I took the car back. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Jack was devastated, and Becky was in tears. They begged for another chance, but my husband and I knew we couldn't keep enabling them. Now, they're scrambling to find a place with the little savings they have. It's a tough lesson, but one they needed to learn. They're still living with us for now, but the atmosphere is strained. We're all trying to navigate this new reality, and it's not easy. I still hope they can turn things around, especially with a baby on the way. But I've learned that sometimes, tough love is the only way to help someone grow up. It's a bittersweet feeling, watching them struggle, but knowing it's for the best in the long run. Mom plans her own party for kids during my kid-free wedding, but fiancé and I confront her and she cancels it, so we rekindle the excitement, and even the angry relatives come back. First post here, sorry for any grammatical errors. My girlfriend and I just got engaged after almost 9 years of dating, and are planning on having our wedding in the spring of next year. With this, we have begun planning the wedding, and one of the topics that came up was whether we want kids to attend our wedding. We are both the oldest kids/cousins in our family, and have always had multiple little kids at every major event in our lives. We decided that we do not want young kids under 10 years old to attend the reception, as we want to have a more adult-style reception. When mentioning this to my mother, she was not happy with the decision we made, as some people will have to leave early because of the no kids rule. There are 3 families that are invited that have kids under 10, with a total of 7 kids under 10 years old. My fiancé and I were expecting at least one of the parents, if not both, from each family to leave early to take care of their kids, and we were completely okay with this, as they have other responsibilities to tend to. Now, my mother is saying that she and my stepdad will be leaving early so that they can throw a separate celebration at their house. This way, the people who are forced to leave because they have kids have somewhere to go and can still have a good time. She is also telling most of the guests from her side of the family, about 50 of the 125 invited, that they should come to her party instead of the reception. After hearing this from her, we got into a heated argument, with her saying she is doing what she feels is right and doesn't need my permission to throw a celebration. It ended with me saying, "You are choosing to throw a celebration at the same time as our reception against our wishes, which you don't need our permission for. You are right about that. But if you are going to leave early because you feel it is the right thing to do, you can just not worry about coming to the wedding in the first place. Because I certainly feel the right thing to do would be to support your kid's wishes on his wedding day, instead of leaving early to go party somewhere else. This is very difficult for me to accept, as I have always imagined my parents being there on my wedding day. But at the same time, we do not want her there if she is just going to leave early to go party somewhere else and try to take half of our guests with her. Am I the idiot? Any feedback is greatly appreciated. I will try to answer any questions as quickly as possible. Edit: for those suggesting us getting a babysitter, we have suggested that to the 3 families, all of which are from out of state, and none of them are comfortable with leaving their kids with a babysitter whom they don't know, which we completely understand. We have also told them that if their family's kids cannot make it due to the no kids policy, we completely understand and will have no hard feelings. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the idiot. This is the weirdest wedding concept I've heard in a while. They want to throw a separate reception for you, without you, in a separate location, just so 7 little kids can feel included in a celebration that won't include the actual wedding couple. And they want a bunch of people to shun the actual reception so they can party with 7 little kids. Yeah, I'd uninvite them too. They're not thinking those 3 families might actually want a night away from kids, or that those 50 people might actually want to celebrate the wedding couple. Comment 2, not the idiot. With this, she is telling most of the guests from her side of the family, about 50 of the 125 invited, that they should come to her party instead of the reception. Your parents lost me here. I could even see, I don't get to see X family member once, and since they have kids and won't be at the reception, I am going to spend time with them. But trying to convince people not to skip your reception for their thing is way out of line. Now, for the update. A lot has happened since my last post, and I never expected things to take the turns they did. When I last updated you all, my fiancé and I were dealing with the fallout from our decision to have a child-free reception. Well, things escalated, and not in the way I thought they would. After the argument with my mom, things cooled down for a bit. She didn't bring up the separate celebration again, and I thought maybe she had reconsidered after our heated exchange. But I was wrong. It turns out she was quietly planning the whole time, and it was my Aunt Lisa who let it slip during a casual phone call. She mentioned she was looking forward to the after-party at my mom's house. My heart sank. I confronted my mom, and she admitted that she was still going ahead with her plans. She said she felt it was the best way to include everyone, and didn't understand why I was making such a big deal out of it. I couldn't believe she was going behind our backs after everything we had said. Meanwhile, my fiancé and I were trying to navigate our own relationship through this mess. We had always been a team, but the stress was starting to show. We had minor arguments over things that never used to bother us, like the seating chart or the menu. It was clear that the situation with my mom was putting a strain on us. Then came the bombshell. One of the families with young kids, my cousin Sarah and her husband, decided they weren't going to come to the wedding at all. They didn't want to deal with the hassle of finding a babysitter in a different state, and they didn't want to split their time between 2 parties. This hit me hard. Sarah and I grew up together, and I always imagined her being there on my big day. But the real heartbreak came from an unexpected place. My fiancé sat me down one evening and with tears in her eyes, She told me she was having second thoughts about the wedding. Not about us, she assured me, but about the wedding itself. She felt like it had become more about pleasing other people than celebrating our love. She was tired of the drama, the fighting, and the tension that seemed to overshadow our upcoming nuptials. I was devastated. The thought of not marrying her was unbearable, but I also understood where she was coming from. We had lost sight of what was important. We spent that night talking, really talking, about what we wanted and how we could get back on track. We decided to confront my mom together. It was a difficult conversation, full of tears and raised voices. My fiancé explained how the situation was affecting us, and I told my mom that if she went through with her party, she would be doing irreparable damage to our relationship. In the end, my mom broke down and apologized. She hadn't realized the impact of her actions and promised to cancel her celebration. She said she just wanted everyone to be happy, but she saw now that she was going about it the wrong way. The relief was immediate, but the damage was done. My fiancé and I had to work hard to rebuild the excitement for our wedding day. We spent more time focusing on each other and less on the details of the event. We also reached out to Sarah and her husband, explaining the situation and asking them to reconsider. After a long discussion, they agreed to come, and we helped arrange for a trusted babysitter to look after their kids at the hotel. As for the rest of the guests, word got around about the cancelled after-party, and the tension seemed to dissipate. People were more understanding than we expected, and it seemed like they were just happy to be a part of our day, no matter the format. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.